Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be here. This is a preliminary qualitative analysis of changes in the socialization of children of asylum-seeking families headed for the US and located in a shelter in Tijuana, Mexico. My name is Erika Clairgue, and I am presenting on behalf of the Laboratory of Human Interaction at the Border and my colleagues, Lucia Alcalá and Ruby Vasquez. This is our agenda. I hope you find this presentation very useful and that you enjoy it. The dynamics of migration have changed. The observations in Tijuana shelters and the reports tell us that it now has the future of being a migration of entire families and seeking for asylum. In Tijuana, our northern border, we receive people from all over the world, high percentage of which are children, but mainly from Central America and southern Mexico. The main cause of this displacement is violence. The migratory crisis in the border increased after the agreements in 2019 between the US and Mexican governments, such as the Migrant Protection Protocols or Remain in Mexico program. Then, when the COVID crisis started, all was stopping people in the Mexican border using the health problem as an excuse to not solve their applications for asylum. This is the reality. In this context, we are interested in the effects of all the social changes in the human development of migrant children. That is why we employ Greenfield's explanatory model on how the social conditions affect the developmental patterns. This model talks about how there is an historical direction of change in this way after a time from a community to a society. It changes all the social interaction and their results in development. For example, it is expected that in a community, the social behavior can be cooperation, and in a society can change to individualism in this direction. Migration occurs from a poor country to a richer one, with all the social and psychological implications. So this affects the population of our interest. And previous studies point out the problem for cultural integration, school adjustment, and some parenting difficulties. But few explore challenges in parenting experiences before migration, as well as while waiting for asylum, for their expectations or their expectations of development after arriving in the US. So we aim to illustrate those elements in this analysis to show the complexity of being parents in such struggling conditions. Our design was qualitative, using narratives talking about their experiences in parenting in the past, present, and future via their expectations. Here you can see some pictures of our field work during summer last year. The study was run in Tijuana. You see in the screen the red pin where the shelter is located. And if you don't know our geography, you see how our city is very close to the richest state in the US. In the red perimeter is Tijuana. The shelter is actually an evangelical temple directed by Pastor Gustavo Banda. It was built in 2016 and became shelter after Haiti caravan 1 year later. It houses between 800 and 1,200 family asylum seekers. 400 of them are children from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Haiti, Africa, and southern Mexico. We interview people, 25 people, and 15 were included in this analysis. The average age was 30 years old, young families. We use a semi-structured questionnaire exploring demographics, migratory history, development of children, socialization, changes, and expectations. We employ a consent form. We record their interviews and then transcribe them verbatim. Our content analysis was using the Atlas T program. The codification was focused on these 3 types of socialization: past, present, and future. This is our preliminary results. I'll show you the most illustrative quotes of their realities. And I'll start with the past. Regarding past, the context of socialization was in a low-income occupations of parents. They had high problems of security, and migration was due to unsafe life for their children. This is shocking. I will read this quote. The thing is that there is a gang. They extort the people in exchange for letting children go to school. They extort the teachers, and the teachers tell us to pay an amount of money in exchange for not harming the children when they go to school. So we used to give them that. With the pandemic, they closed everything, but it didn't stop. One day, some letters arrived suddenly in the jar, to our surprise. They said that if we stopped paying, they would mess with our children, with the family. They were going to harm us. It is because of this fear that we came asking for asylum in the United States. And here we are. This is a representation of what is happening in the context of all these countries. The situation is not far off the story of these men from Guatemala. Life conditions in the place of origin worse after pandemic, and it appear behavior and different problems with the kids. They express that the lack of resources, they had a lack of resources to continue in the online teaching. For example, not having signal for taking the classes, and also they talk us about not having time or knowledge to tutor their kids at home. It is notorious that the loss of motivation and some other psychological problems in the kids arrived starting the pandemic. The present time is the shelter, and there is a living condition where the access to services is shared. They said that it's difficult, that it can be hard. However, they know that having a place where to live is a blessing. They call it in that way. Also, the present time is their emotions. Emotions expressed with the fear and the uncertainty that generates the waiting time of an answer from the US authorities. But again, the role of their faith in God is crucial to keep them calm, and the role of their pastor as a spiritual leader and as a counselor too. Here, it's important to point out that the response of the nonprofit organizations that sometimes are run by religious institutions is very important, because they replace the lack of attention of the governments that the governments are paying. At least in Tijuana is what allows us to provide humanitarian help. We explore the expectations of migrating to the US, mainly to know what they are thinking of the parenting once they get there, if they get it. They in general assume that the life in the US is way better for the child care. This quote represents the general understanding of the American dream. Now, in these times, related to fleeing from corruption and violence. This man say, I am leaving my country because in the United States, the law is better than in other countries. And there is not as much corruption as in other countries. Most of our country is rid with corruption. The government's gangs were the threats. There are many reasons why one can no longer live in such a country. This is a representation of what they are experiencing in the places where they are coming from. Also, asking for expectations, it appears the idea of success. And the idea of success for their children or being someone in life is related to having a profession such as medical doctor or being a lawyer. But this would be only possible if they go to the US in their minds. Again, it is linked to the American dream. Well, if God gives me the chance to come to the United States, I will work hard, buy a little house for my children so that they can study there in San Diego and become someone in life. That's my goal. So the goal of these two women is related to the education that they have no doubt that is going to happen in the US, the quality of education and in general, a quality life. Finally, this is our discussion. To start, we think that the understanding of changes in migrant children development is complexly related to the understanding of all the social conditions around the parenting. Our approach in 3 times is a trial. Probably social changes for migration are affecting children development faster than the paradigmatic point of view when children are experiencing, or the people is experiencing, the changes in their own lands. So we have to see what is happening when the socialization is on the move and on these changes that are happening while we are migrating. Socialization of children from migrant families is a challenge that is perceived for their parents, for the parents as temporary, and one that will be solved upon arrival to the US, the American dream. Parents fear the psychological effects of their children, but do not take into account or not enough in the acculturation process that is coming. It is evident the use of their faith and belief in God as a coping strategy for trauma. And finally, I would like to emphasize that global economic crisis and effects of structural social problems are starting or continue to show their results. So a commitment from the richest countries in terms of actual humanitarian policies is absolutely necessary. Thanks everyone for the attention, to the research department at the university for providing us of the grant for the broader research project. Thanks to the families for sharing with us their experiences. Thanks to the Pastor Gustavo Banda, close the entrance to the shelter. Please do not hesitate in contacting us for any questions or comments.